Welcome to the Shattering Inequities Podcast, where we uncover the bold, research-driven strategies that are transforming education for every student, especially those historically left behind. In each episode, we'll highlight leaders who are not just imagining a better future, but actively creating one. Through real-world successes, challenges, and actionable insights, this podcast is a space to crowdsource solutions that advance shattering inequities in education. And now, here's your host, Dr. Avelar La Salle. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shattering Inequities Podcast, where we believe that every child is entitled to a premium education, no matter where they live, where they go to school, or what their circumstance. As we know, we're here both to inform and inspire, which is why we only bring on guests who have actually led efforts that resulted in amazing results for students who otherwise might not have those opportunities. And secondly, this is a research project. We are crowdsourcing intel from folks who are on the ground doing the work with students, who are challenging the inevitability assumption that some students inherently will do better than others and others just won't do. And what we'll do is collect information from all of our expert guests, plus contributions from our audience, and turn around and publish white papers and share conference presentations so that we can contribute to the strengthening of our field. And with that, let me introduce two amazing such leaders. First, I'd like to welcome Sue Solomon. Sue, thank you so much for being here with us.
I'm very excited, and what a pleasure.
And I'll ask both of you to share your stories a bit, but Sue is a board member extraordinaire. And secondly, I'd like to introduce Lisette Mendez Garcia. Thank you for being with us, Lisette.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Another board member at the other end of the board member career spectrum, and also leading an amazing effort in a school district with real results. So with that, this is what I'd like to do. By way of introduction, I'd like to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Sue. Sue, you are a force. I don't know any other way to describe you. But one day, Sue wasn't the Sue of today. Can you help us understand how you became the Sue of today? What is the trajectory that led you to the place where now you are the champion on a board for years to work toward changing kids? And if you could pepper that with a not on my watch experience that you've had somewhere in that trajectory where you've said to yourself, nope, not happening, not with me here, that contributed to who you are today.
So for me, it really all began when I began my career as a student in public school. And so we're talking nursery school, kindergarten, and my teachers gave me the skills that I needed, not just to learn the academics that we were learning, but they gave me the ability to advocate for myself. And kids don't always get that, or they're not respected sometimes if they try and do that. They're often told that they're outspoken, disruptive, or whatever. And so I felt from the time I was junior high forward that I was going to have a piece of the public education block where I would make a difference. In part, I wanted to be a teacher. In part, I wanted to be in government that helps regulate and support public education. And so in part, in my own world, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be president of the United States. I wanted to be a school teacher. And honestly, when I had my own children and they started public school, the first questions were, what could I do to be involved so that I could learn how the system works, so that I could learn how I best advocate for my own students. And Newhoff School District, which is the board I sit on, but where my kids attended, was a very hands-on, welcoming school district for parent involvement. And my goal with that is to make education a seamless journey for children and a seamless experience for teachers as they grow their instruction. As teachers change grade levels a couple times in their careers, and sometimes they want to, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes the timing of things where district starts new initiatives puts a barrier to things they're trying to accomplish from the previous. And so I wanted to get on here and make sure that our teachers had what they needed to move forward, that their voices were heard at the table, and that anybody who was a part of the Newhall School District community had a voice at the table. I didn't necessarily have to agree with what they said, but as long as their ideas and their sharings and their wonderings were within the law, I am there to put that out there so that we could study it, so we could make the best decisions for the best interest of our students.
Thank you, Sue. I'm going to ask Lisette the same question, and then I'm going to return to you, Sue, and ask you for that not on my watch experience.
Okay.
Let me jump in with Lisette. What made Lisette of today?
Yes. Just like Sue, I'm going to take it back. My first job was when I was 7, 8 years old, and my mom would take me to, she worked at the local elementary school during the summer, and I learned how to file cume folders and how to answer the phone. So that was like my first exposure to public education, because I was in Catholic school, right? From elementary all the way to high school. But every summer I had that exposure of whether it was volunteering in the school office with my mom, or I started to make connections with teachers. And I'm like, hey, can I instead be in the office? I'll help you in the classroom. So I volunteered every single summer all the way through college at the local school in Mendez, right? In the Omani City School District.
Stop real quick. Mija, can you lower your volume a little? Because I think I'm getting feedback from.
Okay, how about now?
Do you see? There's like unless your dog is barking.
My dog's not barking, but I did hear too, when you were speaking, there was a feedback as well.
Yeah,
I did hear a dog barking.
Okay, we'll just keep going. I don't know what that is. We'll just keep going. Maybe they can do something about it. Sorry, continue.
Yes. So that was my first exposure to public education, being able to have kind of that comparison of I was going to private school, but then I was also working and volunteering in the local public schools. And so it was a natural transition for me when I was in college studying to be a psychologist, and the field of school psychology really spoke to me, that I would be able to directly work with students with disabilities and make an impact to determining what type of supports they need in school. So that was my pathway into public education, being a school psychologist. I did that for 10 years. And then currently in the last 4 years, I've been a special education program administrator. And in between that time, I ran for school board. And the reason I ran for school board is being in the role of a school psychologist, I had different levels of exposure, right? At the school site level, I was able to see and start noticing those inequities for both students with disabilities and students, and all students, right? Students who are at risk, students, foster youth, English learners. And then I was, again, had that exposure of various schools, right? Because I was from preschool, elementary, high school, and I was able to see that pathway of when we put students in certain tracks, those long-term outcomes of the outcomes of those decisions we're making in kindergarten, how that was following them high school and beyond, right? And how my testing was also making that impact as well as a school psychologist. So I became very interested in systems change, right? How can we change how we're identifying students? How can I advocate? How can I inform parents about the decisions that we're making for students at such a young age? So when the opportunity came up for me to run for school board, I was like, at the first time I was asked, I was hesitant. I always say the first time, it's all about timing. You may not be ready yet, but just the fact that you open that door to the possibility of running for school board elected office, like that's the first step, that you're open to that idea. So when the next election cycle came through, I ran for school board. I was very confident with that in the sense of I had that background as a psychologist. I had just finished my administrative credential, and I felt like I was ready to then make that jump into public office and run for school board.
Oh, amazing. And Sue, how long have you been on the board now?
I have been on the Newhall School Board for 26 years.
Imagine. And you, Lisette?
This is my second term. And so my third year. So I will say this, I became elected when I was 30. So I was
You have lots of time left.
because I'm a huge advocate for just, it doesn't matter your age. I'm a huge advocate for people running for school board. If you have a passion for it, if you have a passion for systems change, don't never be intimidated by that campaigning. That's one of the biggest intimidations, right? How do I run a campaign? I'm like, just put your name on the ballot. That's the first step.
Right.
That's amazing. Sue, how many superintendents have you cared for?
I've cared for 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm on my 5th.
My goodness. Sue, we talk about a not on my watch moment. Those times in our experience when we say, you know what, I can accept something, I can compromise something else, but not this. And it's a defining moment for you that impacts how you see the world moving forward and your work and advocacy moving forward. Can you remember one of those not on my watch moments?
Not on my watch moments for me, and this is really big, and one of the few things I will die on the cross for, is our arts education program in the Newhall district. And so in my earlier years on the board, when California was going through a recession, districts were looking for ways to cut, to save money in order to at least maintain the quality of instruction they have. And a lot of the times the arts are looked at as extra program. And so the Newhall district has a 46-year-old music program. But during that time period, it was being considered on the chopping block. And I have my stories for that, which I don't know if I want to say all public. But I was also a parent in the district and was part of the Music Boosters Club too. So I knew what was coming. I know what I could say and what I couldn't say and how to motivate parents to say, hey, we need to keep this program. And so the goal was to keep that program, and the superintendent definitely saw the value in it. You have to hear the stories. The stories are very important to why we need to do things, not just data, but all the stories that go with it. And then the ultimate goal was to get an arts education master plan and expand our core instruction for the arts, which we have now. It's all about getting the right personnel in place, the right leadership and timing. And when that all works, you can make these things happen. And so now we have an Master of Arts education plan for all grade levels, so that as the children go through elementary school, they get music from TK forward. That includes learning, reading the notes, writing, composition, playing the recorder, deciding whether to go into chorus or orchestra. 6th grade gets dance, hip hop. 4th grade gets theater production. So every grade level has access to a different type of art. And so that's probably going to be my biggest legacy when I'm no longer serving on the board, but I will die on the cross for the arts, because so much of that is a hook for a child to stay at school, to stay interested in learning. So we can't forget that. So it's not anything extra. It's not co-curricular. It's part of our core instruction and what we do here.
And I think what I'm hearing you say, and you just inadvertently dropped it in at the end, the arts are beautiful, and it's the hook for a lot of kids that they need to want to be in school. And I also am hearing come through the lessons that you learned from that, the way to astutely advocate for something has influenced, I'm sure, how you advocate for.
You have to keep pushing it. That you can't let up. When you believe in something so much that you know will benefit all of our children, you have to keep at that voice. Doesn't matter who's in the superintendent position or the assistant sup of instruction or any of it. You keep putting it there, and you do that for other parts of learning also. So you have to be that. You have to be consistent. It goes from heart to mind. That's how it works for you. When they're in a line, you can do anything.
What lucky students, lucky district. Lisette, What's your defining not on my watch experience?
I'm going to give two.
Good.
I am, just because there's something very similar that Ms. Solomon was mentioning about all means all. So when you provided an opportunity for students, whether it's musical theater or a field trip, it shouldn't be determined on what school they go to, who has the funding to send them, whether their parents can pay for it. And so when I became, and this is something I learned that was possible as a board member, I'm going to give credit to my amazing superintendent, Dr. Garcia, and her cabinet, where I came on, they started introducing me about, they were one of the first districts that were doing the meals for all students. Before it became part of, for all throughout California, right? That all students have breakfast and lunch. And they shared with me like, no, it should be that all students should have access to breakfast and lunch. And that was something that Monte City School District launched quite a few years ago. And now it's something that's a state initiative. And then next thing you know, they're introducing, oh, by the way, second graders, all second graders are going to have the experience of swimming lessons. We collaborated with our city, our Parks and Rec, so that all second graders have several weeks of swimming lessons. And then every year since I've been on board, I'm going to brag moment, I'm going to expand because I had to write this down. Then it was all of our sixth graders are going to go to science camp. I was used to, oh, whoever can pay, whatever parent can pay, that's who goes to science, and we're going to fundraise. But it was like, no, when we say that all means all, that means all students will have that experience of science camp, right? And then it was like, oh, by the way, we're going to send all of our kids to Sacramento. And that's our fourth graders. And even me as a board member, like, how are we doing this? And it's, again, through the various funding of ELOP, of all the COVID funds. So we've sent, this is our second year in a row, we sent all of our fourth graders on a day trip to Sacramento. We fly them. So just think about those experiences. They come back and that spark in their eyes of, I flew in an airplane. I went to the Capitol. And then I'm going to top it off with our eighth graders. This is our second time we've sent all our eighth graders who choose to go, of course, to a 4 to 5 day trip to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Right there. And to come back and to see the videos, you're right, and to see the students, that life-changing moment. It's all those little experiences, that little and big experiences that we're giving our students, because we have said that all means all when it comes to opportunities for our students. They may not necessarily be into science or art, but we're giving them that exposure. And how beautiful is that to give them and those memories.
What people may not know is your school district serves very much a working class community. It is not a school district that traditionally would have sent students on planes, other places for study trips. So that is, you're behaving as if you're in a middle class or upper income neighborhood. You're behaving as if, but it's not the case. That's beautiful. Let me ask you, Sue, your district has produced amazing results. You have distinguished schools that include kids from all backgrounds. Your achievement doesn't discriminate. Everybody is getting uplifted in your district. It is defying the odds academically in most ways. If people were to ask you, so Sue, you've been on the board a minute or two, what is the solution to closing achievement and student outcome gaps? What is the solution to ensuring that every student, no matter their background, has strong academic proficiency so they can take their life wherever they decide for it to go? What would you answer?
There's multiple parts to that question. So, first is knowing your school community, knowing your students, and then placing teachers in the right grade levels, that you get the most out of their strengths and that they are a match for that school community. And then you go through and make a determination what kind of strategies we're going to use in instruction so that we can make sure all students receive that equitable instruction, that all students who have learning gaps, we can close those gaps. And over the 26 years, our superintendent, Dr. Mark Winger, who was here for 17 of those 26 years. He's a visionary with those things. Okay, so very early years when PLC, professional learning communities, came into play, he implemented that in our district. And as with anything, in order to have our teachers connect with that and our administrators, he had to bring it in phases. So we did that. That was one of the first things. They looked at GLAD strategies, and then first primarily they looked at that for students in Title I schools, English language learners, but they saw the great advantage for that for all students, right? And so it's getting those strategies organized, what's going to work for your school site where teachers have time to go over the data. And we did all those big things. And then it's okay, we're doing really well. And those are the years they had the API scores, right? So here's our goals. We have the big goals, and we're using the PLC strategies and the GLAD strategies. And we developed what we call the coherent writing program, where that actually won an award, the Golden Bell at the California School Boards Association. All teachers from across the district came together to create the writing standards and what kids had to know at each grade level. And so our sister districts in Santa Clarita actually wanted to learn all of that. So that was a big piece of it. So we had everything in place with math too. Everything was in place. Dreambox and RAS Kids and the Common Core instruction, when that changed in about 2014 or so, that really fed that broadened strategies where students were actually much more active in their learning because they work in the groups. Here's the lesson. And now there was a lot more student discourse. And so they worked together. So we had all of these really big pieces, and they were working at some schools with greater results than other schools. Students with the demographics of English language learners in particular, and then maybe some of the socio disadvantaged students. So it was that struggle to figure out, well, how deeper can we look at our data? And so then the teachers went through this whole period where they developed all kinds of assessment tests. And then everything was about testing. And then it was like, it got to be too much. So then you have to pull some of that back. And so, like I say, timing is everything in life. Our teachers in the Newhall district have great tools, and they're all very dedicated to each and every student as individuals, as well as their whole class. And so we finally got to a point, probably just within the last 2 years, where now our teachers have come together and created a roadmap for the grade levels that enables them to come together, not just for PLC, but where they are disaggregating the data to the finite of each and every student. And it's not just about moving the student further in their learning for achievement on the state test. It's about not that, just that student, but taking the student who's just about there and moving them that half inch, if you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And so that whole piece came together as a result of teachers coming together last summer. I think it was just last summer, where they created learning cycles. They listed the standards that they felt every grade level needed to know. And then another session, they created the formative tests. And so what that did, though, in addition to being able to look at student learning so closely, it aligned all 10 of our schools. So all 10 of our schools now have the same alignment for standards, the same tools for disaggregating the data. They have the same roadmap so that all students, no matter where they are in the learning curves of life, they will get to, and it won't happen overnight, but I am positive, based on the fact that just 2 days ago, I was at one of my schools, and it's one that really needs a big hug a lot of the time. They started the school year in September with the first test where the kids were just at 6%, okay? in language arts. And at the end of this semester, like right now, they are at 51%.
Oh my gosh, Sue, that's amazing.
Okay. And prior to this podcast, I had conversations with 3 teachers from 3 different schools. Our highest performing school, our next highest, and then probably one of the lowest. Okay. And I identify that in terms of state tests. Okay. Because I feel like learning is going on no matter what the color those little dashboards are. And so what I saw cohesively between the 3 teachers, also different grade levels, was the excitement, the overall feeling that I can do anything when I know what anything is. They like having that clarifying roadmap. They like knowing what the next 5 to 6 weeks of those learning cycles are. And they, as hard as I don't know what DRS stands for, data review session or whatever, I think that's what it is. It's called doctors here. They're calling it doctors because they have to review them. But the first ones can be painful because you're like, oh, but now that they're really worked through the school year, their hearts are full. They're so excited. And to see that collaboration across grade levels at each site and then across the district is something to behold. And as a school board member, because I'm in my schools all the time, I visit them throughout the school year. I go to 4th grade at one, 4th grade to the next, and 4th grade to the other 3. And everybody's on the same place.
Wow,
So
Sue.
I'm not making this stuff up. I've been here for 26 years.
Wow.
And now I think Newhall is in such a great place for student learning and teaching.
Lisette, there's so many themes. There's data, the use of data. There's the bringing teachers together for collaboration. There's supporting instruction using the data. There's a cohesive plan. And there's the long game. This started 26 years ago with longevity of a superintendent. Does any of that resonate with you?
What really resonated with me is how you get teachers excited. And then that investment. You were mentioning that they're able to see that clear pathway of where we're going and why we're going there. And then you have that investment, because a big part of it is how do you shift that culture and create that all teachers have their high expectations for their students. That's a huge cultural shift, but when you get them excited about something.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. One teacher spent 90 minutes with me because she just wanted me to and showed me work. That's how excited they are. They're really, because they're doing it. They work hard all year long. It doesn't matter where they are teaching, but there's just something that's just a little amiss that isn't be able to close those learning gaps as they work hard to do.
Lisette, so in your experience, if you were to be asked, so Lisette, how do you get a district that has the majority of students being considered low socioeconomic and a very high percentage of English learners, and the college degree rate in the community very low? And it's got all the typical profile of a school district that serves students who are highly vulnerable to academic struggles. And yet, your student achievement is rivaling that of middle-class students across the state. How would you answer the question of how do you do that?
Yeah. What I've observed in the Almonte City School District is several factors, right? I'm going to say the first one being innovative leadership. So from our superintendent, our assistant supes and principals, they're always thinking outside the box and being pushed to think the impossible. Like I said, it wasn't good enough to say, okay, whoever can go to science camp can go to science camp, whoever can fundraise it for it. But it is about saying, what would it take to send all of our kids to science camp? What would it take to send all of our students to DC? What would it take to accelerate student learning. Even this year, something that was, again, they throw these things at me, and even I'm a board member, we can do that. Where the challenge is, again, a lot of educators are saying that they feel burnt out. You hear about people wanting to have a 4-day work calendar. So something my district proposed was 5 free Fridays within the school calendar. And obviously you need to adjust it because we have to have mandated certain number of school days. But these 5 free Fridays, and they're strategically placed on those long stretches where typically teachers will take those days for mental health days, or even parents will also take their students out on that Friday to maybe have a 3-day weekend because it was such a long break, such a long time without having a break. And then again, for students who wanted and needed, we would still be having a place, and we would then provide enrichment opportunities for them, field trips. So parents, if you still need a place to send your children, you can still send them to school, but we're going to now provide them enrichment experiences and field trips. And that way we now have strategically placed these 5 free Fridays to address those feelings of burnout. And again, it's reinvigorating our staff into being excited about, I don't want to use the word excited, but maybe having that break where they normally would have to go 4 weeks without a break. So that's that innovative thinking about addressing staff needs so that then we can support students better. Right?
Wow.
So cognizant of that. Again, thinking outside the box. And can we do this? Let's try to do it. Let's do it.
So both of you, what's screaming at me is the immense respect you have for staff. You're board members, and I'm hearing you be 1,000% advocates for the adults.
You won't have achievement in the classroom if you don't have the teachers in a good place, feeling good about where they work, how they're treated, how they're taken care of, how they're presented with training. And so for me as a board member, when we take on a new program or an initiative, I go to teachers' meetings so that I can hear what they say, so that I can make an informed decision about what might come before me related to whatever it is they're going to be looking at. And when they see a board member present with them, putting in the extra hours, and I don't get paid for doing that, I do that because I think it's important for them to see that somebody cares about what they're doing, to show respect for what they do, and so that I have an understanding of what they're doing. So when I vote on a $250,000 contract that's going to support bringing in some program, more staff for something, I know how it's going to impact my teachers and my administrators at my school sites. So it's important for us to be there so that they know it's important. If it's important to the superintendent and the school board, and you show them that, and it's all about those kids, it's knowledge, but it's heart. You have to have the heart and the love to do this. You have to love kids. Nobody's a teacher who hates kids. It doesn't work. They're gone. So it's also because of the passion for learning that my teachers instilled upon me. And so I want my teachers to have everything they need to have to do that for their students.
Wow, that's beautiful. Who wouldn't want to work under those conditions? Lisette, do you agree?
Yes, and I want to add and also emphasize making sure our support staff have that same attention and that same investment, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
From our instructional aides, our nutrition staff, and our maintenance. And that's another thing I've noticed as well when we host our back to school first day back, right? Where typically it would just be teachers, right? First day back, teachers provide a breakfast, a PD. No, we include everyone. So we find a space, and in that is the nutrition department, the maintenance department, instructional aides. Again, this is a family, and we're all here. Everyone is so vital to supporting our students, to making sure they have breakfast in the morning, supper if they're staying after school, that the grounds are maintained. All of that is important. There's that investment, and you see it when you walk in, when you meet the support staff, and they know when they're feeling acknowledged. And then again, they're excited. They're there to volunteer, to say, I'll go on that field trip. I'll stay those extra hours to make sure that all of our students are included in these opportunities.
I'm going to ask something very hard now. And that is, in the real world that we all live in, and we are aware that many places don't have the conditions that you have. What you're describing as highly functioning school board, superintendent, teacher organization relationship. You're describing, I think, the way it was intended to be, where it's a mutually supportive synergy and where there's no competition or scarcity sort of thinking or attempts to sacrifice student for adult interests and those sorts of things. What is the solution to get to that place? That's not the case everywhere. How does one get those conditions?
I think you have to have parent involvement at your schools, because the parents go out and vote in their community. Parents need to feel welcome at their school, but they need to participate so that they can learn about their school districts, because they can have a very strong voice at who sits at that table, the district table with the school board and the superintendent. And so to me, that's a big piece of it. Just, what I know from other districts, from other areas and nearby, it's really getting the community as partners to support their schools. And that isn't easy to do in and of itself, but you have to know your demographics. You have to know what works with different groups of people, and you have to, I know it's a hard question, but you have to connect people to the schools. And then if you're a governing board that has dissension amongst yourselves, that's like the worst. But there isn't like the most perfect governing board in the world. As long as a governing board, I feel one of the most important things that a governing board can do is to go for the training, the Masters in Governance with the School Board Association, because that gives you the same foundation on which you make decisions and how you understand how a school district works, what the board members' responsibilities are. That's important. It's important too that the superintendent also goes along for that ride and that Masters of Governance, so that he or she or they also understand what the role of the school board is also, and the role of the superintendent, because there are a lot of board members will run over the superintendent, and hopefully that it's not, those situations don't last, but it's a big part of the whole relation building.
So I hear, and I hadn't thought about the importance of having the community who end up voting for the board be emotionally connected to the schools. That'll color the way they vote, and that'll bring to the board table a certain type of person. And I also hear the importance of defining roles. But I think that is so true, Lisette. You're in a highly functioning situation, but you have exposure to many other districts that don't enjoy that. What do you think it takes to create a situation where it's working the way it's supposed to, where no one entity has interests that outweigh those of the students?
Yeah. So what I've seen is historically school boards, we weren't on the news, right? And you're right. If you would ask someone, especially in an election, we would get outshadowed by whether it was city council elections, obviously Senate elections, but now people are paying more and more attention to school board election and who's running for school board. So it's so important to bring that awareness, and to, whether it's working with your parent group or your teachers union PAC, on making sure who are we supporting for running for school board. And then as an individual school board member, and I've done this already, I know every election cycle, I need to make sure that I'm supporting with identifying and mentoring potential people who would be interested in running for school board. I'm in a school district where we really don't have too many people that run for our seats, right? So because of that, you can have one random person just put their name on the ballot. And they can essentially just walk into the office, right? So if you only have 3 open seats, 3 people are on the ballot, that's an automatic win. So you have to be aware of the political climate or who's running for what. Once you're in politics, you start learning about it that summer. Everyone's wondering who's running for city council, who's running for mayor, who's going to rerun for their seat. You have to pay attention that you have to be an active participant in that, because it's going to be, you can't just sit back and say, oh, let's see who runs for my school board. You have to pay attention to know, hey, are you running for school? Are you going to rerun for your seat? If I decide one day that I can't run, it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm identifying or possibly mentoring someone who would want to run for my seat. So you need to be an active participant in that process to ensure that people who have good intentions, right, and have that opportunity. And then at the end of the day, your committee are the ones who are then electing this person into office.
I hear you both saying that as people who are willing to volunteer to advocate for everybody's children, that you don't leave it to chance, that you are actively engineering a situation that's healthy, that you're not sitting there just hoping that you end up with an okay situation, hoping that board members are clear about their role, or that superintendents are clear about their role, or that the union leaders are clear. You're ensuring that to the extent of your of influence, you're giving the situation the nudges in the right ways to increase the likelihood of good outcome.
Yes.
I'm hearing a little bit of intentional.
You do. One of my board members currently was a dad. I watched him. We were on this district safety committee together. And I thought, wow, this guy asks a lot of really great questions. And he's calm and he's rational. And so for that year, while we served on that committee, I was thinking maybe he would like to sit on the school board. So just before that election cycle began, I said, hey, would you like to sit on the Newhall School Board? You ever thought about that? And he goes, I think I might like to do that. That's literally what he said. Let me talk it over with my wife and I'll get back to you. That's what Lisette is saying about observing parents, community members, very intentional on how to find a school board member that will bring new ideas, but keep and respect the culture and tradition of your school district. That's all very important.
So I'll ask one more hard question, because I think people might be thinking this, and that is, people elect you, people lobby you, people have special interests. Sounds unethical. I don't mean that, but parents have certain interests and staff have certain interests and vendors and companies have certain interests and you have certain passions. And how would you characterize the solution when you're a board member and you have these voices pushing you in sometimes not so gentle ways to behave in a way that's favorable to their point of view? And sometimes that might be a good thing in your estimation, and sometimes it might not be advantageous to the direction you're going as a whole. Have either of you ever experienced that sort of pressure? And how would you advise a board member who wants to have a healthy culture in a school district focused on student needs? How do you respond to that?
I haven't had a lot of pressure from outside groups. Every school district has a reputation in those communities. And so those vendors, I'll call them that for lack of anything else.
Or anybody, Sue, or community groups.
Well, honestly, I personally haven't had to deal a lot with that. Santa Clarita Valley as a whole doesn't deal a lot with that. Every now and then you get somebody who says, oh, I have this, I think this would be great for your school district. And I'll say, okay, and I'll just refer them to the assistant soup of business. Okay. Not my job to take on, oh, I think you need to use this product for these reasons. And I met them at this conference. That's not my position.
So back to defining the roles, because that's violated all the time.
It's back to defining the roles.
Ah,
And then if I have parents, the benefit of being here for a long time is people know what I'll do and what I won't do. But mostly the things I get asked are mostly about student placement in our schools, when parents have very specific schools they want to go to. It even may be their homeschool and it's full. You can't say to a parent, oh, I promise you'll get into this school. That doesn't work. There's a process. So I educate them on the process. I inform the superintendent, hey, this parent has this concern and they may contact you. So again, it's the role. My responsibility is to say, thank you for that information, and I will share it with the superintendent or the appropriate staff member.
Could it be as simple, Lisette, as through word and deed consistently over years, when you behave with integrity and you treat people with respect and you believe in the dignity of everybody involved, that these kind of pressures just don't appear in the same way as they might somewhere else? Could it be as simple as that?
Good.
Yes, me, Ms. Holt, we understand our role. We're part of a governance team. We're not the ones who are bringing in contracts and one person that's approving a contract. We understand who to refer that vendor to. We listen actively. Thank you so much for the information. Thank you for the free pen or hand sanitizer. And because we understand our role. But one thing that was, and this is something I learned as well with attending, making sure that there are trainings for school board members, right, through the California School Board Association. And those are so important that your superintendent doesn't ask, but actively signs you up for these trainings, right? Or provides you the materials. One of the biggest books that changed my outlook on my role, it's called The Governance Core. And it's about you're part of a governance team, and here's some active strategies. And one of them is creating a governance handbook. And so that was one thing that I wanted to make sure that we had one, but we updated it. We formed a little subcommittee. And that was when I was board president, because as a new board member, I'm like, this would be really helpful, because as a new board member, the whole concept of being a board member, you were so focused on campaigning, right? How do I make sure I'm fundraising and turning all the financial paperwork in correctly so I'm not cited? So once you get elected, you're like, okay, what do I do now? How do I go about if a vendor comes up to me to ask about, hey, I would love to have a contract with your district, right? And so we really worked on updating our governance handbook to really outline our norms, our agenda, frequently asked questions. What do you do when you want to visit a school site? What do you do if you have a vendor? What do you do if you want to have a certificate created? Like all these little things. So then that way, as new board members come in, or if we need to reference it, or maybe we need to cue someone back into what they're doing, we were able to refer to, hey, remember our governance handbook that outlines when A happens, this is what we do, and we agree to this.
You know what I'm not hearing at all is anything that even feels adversarial. And often in the discussion of anything with a board member's role and the superintendent and the professional associations and community groups, you hear the word adversarial in some form or another. And I was sitting here listening to both of you thinking, why does this feel so different? Isn't that what I thought we were going to be talking about? Oh, because there's no adversarial nature assigned to any of the relationships here. And you have an amazing student outcomes. You're overcoming odds for kids. I bet there's a relationship there.
Yeah.
I bet that's a huge part of the solution. Both of you. Sue, you are a force of nature. Just listening to you and imagining what it takes for almost 3 decades every day.
Oh, I never thought about it like that.
Almost 3 decades
Okay.
every day to do something that doesn't pay you, except in the reward of helping other people's children. What kind of human being you are to do it, and to, at the end of, not at the end, but here, almost 3 decades later, in the middle of what you're doing, to remain optimistic, excited, not cynical, not jaded, but everything the opposite, everything bright, is just something to behold. And I couldn't thank you more. And then to see Lisette just starting out, I think standing on the shoulders of people like Sue here and picking up the mantle. And I can't wait to see 3 decades from now what you'll be doing. I just need to, by way of full disclosure, I have interacted with Sue in a variety of ways. Our paths have crossed. And so I feel like, Sue, you're part of my family. And Lisette, I must mention, there's another last name that's missing from her name, and that is Lisette Avelar Mendez Garcia. She's my niece, my first cousin's daughter. And so on both counts, I couldn't be prouder. And I thank you both for taking the time to share your wisdom, insights, and love for everybody's children, and reminding us that we do not need to smush the adults in order to help the children.
The dog agrees.
We do not need to smush the adults to help the children, but in fact, the way to help the children is to honor, treat people with dignity, respect, and support as we move this amazing machinery forward that otherwise would have only some students receive a premium education. But here it is clear that all means all.
Definitely.
Thank you both very much. All my love and respect to both of you.
Thank you.
To our audience, we look forward to your comments and your contributions as we move forward. So thank you again to both of you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shattering Inequities requires more than conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future of education together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for all students. Thanks for listening.